She's back. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. I'm Abby, I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday, the series where once a week I sit down and just talk about a classic album I love. If 30-minute episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, here on my channel, over on my Instagram, and on TikTok. If you've been keeping up with the happenings around here, then you would have seen me on Wednesday night for the new episode of Now Dig This, the music show with all the greatest bands you've never heard of. That's linked in my description. Or maybe you saw me on Friday for a casual chit-chat vinyl collection update. But other than all that mess, I've been on break from Vinyl Monday since the supersized last episode. Most importantly, I listened to whatever the hell I wanted. After studying the most head-splitting, bizarro shit the 60s had to offer for weeks on end, in tandem with Black Sabbath no less, I was happy to mix up the rotation. Gotta keep a balance, you know, since there was a flurry of news about this band in my absence, I figured this would be a good band to make my return to Vinyl Monday with. This week's album is Rubber Soul by the Beatles. Congrats if you guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along and keep up with the rest of the channel happenings like Now Dig This and me cropping up in other places, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's where I post my hints to what next week's album is gonna be, and sometimes you can pick what albums you want to see, like right now. Yes, it's that time of year again. The poll is open. You can vote for your favorite of 3 albums, and best 2 out of 3 will be the December 11th and 18th episodes respectively. Wait, just the 11th and 18th? What about the rest? All I will say about the rest is expect the unexpected. After making a feature film length video about the MC5, am I returning with a Beatles video? Yes. Why? Fuck you, that's why. Plastic off. So my copy is well, I actually have 3 copies of Rubber Soul. This was my first one. It's a US copy from 1966. She's in pretty fragile condition. Yeah, this was very well loved before me, and now it's even more well loved since I played this so much. This was my second copy, my replacement US copy from 1968. This is a lot more playable than my first copy, that's for sure. But this is the version we'll be focusing on this episode. My third copy, this is a very special piece in my collection, a 1966 UK mono Rubber Soul. This was sent to my P.O. box by one of my lovely viewers. The viewers make Vinyl Monday happen, this episode especially. Thank you so much. Let's talk about this cover art. The Rubber Soul art was photographed by Robert Freeman in the garden of John Lennon's home at Weybridge. This kind of wavy, stretched effect, this was a happy accident. Rob was showing the guys his photos by projecting them onto a piece of cardboard. When he got to this photo, the cardboard tipped over and fell backwards against the wall. That's why it looks kind of like this. The guys really liked the effect. The photo kind of looked like it was taken with a fisheye lens. Fisheye lens album covers will become wildly popular in the next couple years. Replicating this stretch effect was a lot easier said than done. This was long before the days of Photoshop, so you couldn't just load this into your computer and just stretch it like that. It took many tries to print the photo this way. I love this art. It's like the Beatles for Sale cover all grown up. And George said as much too. A little later on, he said the Rubber Soul cover was the shedding of the Beatles' innocence, the naivete, and this was their debut as, and I quote, fully fledged potheads. The text in the upper corner was designed by Charles Front, and he was inspired by the album title. Rubber is kinda squishy, so he wanted round, squishy looking text. It is so groovy and quintessentially 60s in the great debate of the orange UK text or the brown US. I'm gonna have to go with orange. On the back cover, we have George Harrison in a little cowboy outfit. That is all. On Rubber Soul, we have John Lennon on vocals, guitar, organ on Think for Yourself, and tambourine. Paul McCartney on vocals, bass, piano, guitar, and some maracas. George Harrison on guitar, sitar, and lead vocals on Think for Yourself and If I Needed Someone. And Ringo Starr on drums, various percussion, including a matchbox, Hammond organ, and lead vocals on What Goes On. As for special guests, we've got Mal Evans hopping in on the Hammond for You Won't See Me, and George Martin playing piano on In My Life, and something called a harmonium? Yeah, I don't know what model he used, but if Google is to be trusted, then a harmonium is some kind of bizarro combination of an organ and an accordion. You know, I used to say that the only problem with the organ, beautiful instrument otherwise, the only problem was that you couldn't throw it at somebody if you needed to make a quick getaway. I'm thinking the harmonium is the solution. Rubber Soul was produced by George Martin. Why we're getting a remastered red and blue album before a Giles Martin Rubber Soul, I will never understand. It is utterly confounding. That is all I am saying on this matter. Roll transition. So for starters, where did this title come from? John said it was a Paul-ism. A recent Rolling Stones review had come up in conversation. That review called Mick J's singing Plastic Soul. Paul either misremembered it as Rubber Soul or came up with Rubber Soul as a spin on the Plastic Soul quip. Ringo said in a press conference shortly after the album's release that Rubber Soul was a recognition of the valley between the British blues guys, the vast majority white, and black R&B, soul, and rock and rollers in America. Just filtered through cheeky Beatles humor. Or maybe it's an acknowledgement of the inherent inauthenticity of pop culture as a whole. Who knows? Not I. The guys were on a bit of an R&B kick through pre-production, citing songs by Otis Redding, James Brown, Smokey Robinson, the Four Tops, and Wilson Pickett as influences. We hear the R&B soul influence more so in the composition and in John's vocal stylings. You don't hear it so much in the instrumentation. That all came from this booming new scene out in Laurel Canyon, California. Those bands, namely a really good Bob Dylan cover band called The Byrds, are just running the game in American pop music right now, and this stronghold will only grow over the next year. During Rubber Soul pre-production, the Beatles meet up with two of their heroes. The closing track, Run for Your Life, is a sort of response song to Elvis Presley's Baby Let's Play House. In August of 1965, on the Beatles' US tour, they swing by Elvis's home in Bel Air. Colonel Tom is there, the Memphis Mafia is there, and Elvis is accompanied by a young, very young, Priscilla Beaulieu. Think for Yourself was said to be inspired by Bob Dylan. The Beatles took cues from Dylan, not just musically, but in the style department as well. The turtlenecks and suede the guys are wearing on the Rubber Soul cover, those are very Dylan-esque. So the first time the Beatles met Bobby, he got them so stoned that they thought they'd figured out the meaning of life. But really, they just couldn't stop giggling at everything. This time around was a lot more chill. The guys found some time in their busy filming schedule for Help to go see Dylan after his show in London. The Beatles brought along singer Alma Cogan. She was famous through the 50s and early 60s. John brought his wife Cynthia, and Dylan was there with Allen Ginsberg. This is kind of an odd combo of people, so it was horribly awkward. That is, until Allen fell off the arm of the couch and into John's lap. That's an icebreaker if I've ever seen one. Something is happening in music. Nowadays, we might call it the dawn of psychedelia. To that one guy in my comments who gets picky about me abbreviating it to psych-cope, the seeds were no doubt planted through the end of 65 and into early 66. I know we talk about the Byrds, the Yardbirds, 13th Floor Elevators, Beatles, Stones as being pioneers of psych, and don't get me wrong, they are. But there are a couple pioneers of the genre that nobody really talks about. Sunshine came softly through my today. There's a reason I don't sing. Donovan's Sunshine Superman was supposed to be the first psych song. This is the album that I have right here, the song. It was supposed to be released in January of 1966, but it got delayed until the summer. If it were released on time, this song would have predated literally every other psych song I can think of. 8 Miles High by the Byrds, Shapes of Things by the Yardbirds, the Stones, Paint It Black, all of it. There isn't sitar on the song, but it is on the record. A really important step in sort of our procession towards psych is the introduction of sitar into pop music. The best known early purveyor of this instrument is, of course, Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. He famously played it on Paint It Black. But Brian wasn't the first white guy in Britain playing the sitar. The guys soon to be of the incredible String Band, they wouldn't be a concrete lineup until 1966. This is their 1967 record right here. They were the first Brits incorporating sitar into their music. George Harrison gets his after seeing one on the set of Help. He's like, hey, that thing's got strings. I play an instrument with strings. I could totally play that. The Beatles are moving through life like 4 little mop-haired sponges, absorbing so much, having so many enriching experiences. Maybe a little too many. Come October of 65, when it's time to get back to work, they don't have any new material to bring into the studio. The first song recorded for the album was Wait back in June, but the first song cut during honest-to-goodness Rubber Soul sessions was Run for Your Life. Okay, boys, we are in a crisis situation. What do we write about? Starting with Paul, he's having some issues with his muse, Jane Asher. He really wants to settle down with her, or rather, he wants her to settle down for him, but she wants to keep jetting all over the world for her acting career. Paul and Jane had fundamentally different life goals, and relationships between two people with very different goals very rarely work out. This strife becomes Paul's new muse. He contributes several songs about miscommunications and general relationship trouble to Rubber Soul. Meanwhile, John is lamenting, like, everything. We've thoroughly entered the sad boy John era. He's having issues with his marriage, with fame, with the world, himself. He's tired of all of it. George is busy picking up this new instrument. His personal life comes along a little later, and Ringo's, you know, just being Ringo. But this time, he gets to sing. There is a time crunch to finish Rubber Soul, and one of these solutions is for the Beatles to dip into their back catalog. What Goes On, a song they wrote back in '63, comes up, and they all just kind of go, sure, why the hell not? Ringo's been all about the country music lately, so What Goes On is rearranged into sort of a country thing for him to sing. Good job, Ringo. Michelle was a vintage vintage Beatles ditty too. Paul used to sing this one to impress pretty girls on the Beatles' adventures through Germany and France. If I had a nickel for every time a Gemini bassist adopted a French sona in hopes of getting girls, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but the fact that this extremely specific scenario happened twice! By the midpoint of sessions in late October, the Beatles are booked at EMI until 3 o'clock in the goddamn morning to grind this thing out before their holiday season deadline. I don't know when they put this rule into effect, but EMI had a rule that once the tape started rolling on the Beatles at the beginning of the day, they did not stop. There's banter from the Rubber Soul sessions circulating around on YouTube. What I've gathered from it is A, these guys were stupid efficient when they wanted to be. We gathered that much from Get Back, but otherwise, B, George Martin had the patience of a fucking saint.
Marina, Aquamarina, how come you fuck up everything that you do?
I'm not really sure how miking the Matchbox so close that it sounds like a hand clap came about, but these inventions do have a way of manifesting themselves during a time crunch. Just like George Martin playing the piano on In My Life and speeding it up so it sounds like a harpsichord. They took that route because, well, no one can play it fast enough. This is Spare Parts. This is a Beatles bootleg made in Britain in the 80s. I got this for my birthday a few months back. It's got radio appearances, rarities, and an alternate take of I'm Looking Through You. I don't know how much of this the YouTube copyright system will allow me to have in this video. They're pretty strict about Beatles stuff, but let's listen to a little bit.
I'm looking through you. You're not the same.
Pretty cool, right? The final track completed for the album was Girl. The track listing of Rubber Soul goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we've got Drive My Car, followed by Norwegian Wood with the subtitle This Bird Has Flown. Then You Won't See Me. Next, Nowhere Man. Then Think for Yourself, followed by The Word, and closing out side 1, we have Michelle. Opening up side 2, we have What Goes On, followed by Girl. Then I'm Looking Through You. Next, In My Life. Then Wait, If I Needed Someone, and the album closes with Run for Your Life. Now let's take a look at the US track listing. Don't think I've forgotten about that one. Side 1 opens with I've Just Seen a Face from Help. Then Norwegian Wood, You Won't See Me, Think for Yourself, The Word, and side 1 closes out with Michelle. Opening up side 2, we have It's Only Love, also cut from Help in the US. Then Girl, I'm Looking Through You, In My Life, Wait, and the album closes with Run for Your Life. Normally I wouldn't devote this much time to a US Beatles track listing, but this one's different. Not only is this a scrambling of the Rubber Soul track listing, Capitol was given alternate versions of 2 of these songs. This track listing also ruined the joke of the album title. Capitol cut all of the most soul-influenced songs to favor the folk stuff. Gotta compete with the Byrds somehow. Rubber Soul was released on December 3rd, 1965. The promo single was my favorite Beatles single, Day Tripper, backed by We Can Work It Out. Day Tripper is so Rubber Soul, from the tambourine to the ch-ch-ch-ch of the drums and Paul's bass line going so unreasonably hard. The guys promoted started this album by touring through the end of 65 and through 66. This would be their final year of touring. I told you we'd get to the deets of what's going on in George's life, so here we are. In the immediate aftermath of Rubber Soul's release, he popped the question to his girl, model and occasional actress Patty Boyd. My outfit today was inspired by what Patty wore to attend the photo shoot for the back cover of this album. They got married all of a few weeks later, making George the first Beatle to be publicly married. Mary Quant herself gifted the happy couple these gorgeous coats to wear on their wedding day. It was January in Britain. It was very cold. Both George and Patty re-wore them, most famously George at the rooftop concert. Paul served as best man. Now, normally Jane would have been around to corral him, but she was off working, so no man or manager could keep Paulie from getting white boy wasted. How drunk was he? So drunk that he rounded up Patty's little brothers to explore. They somehow got a hold of a bow and arrow and shot an arrow directly through the windshield of Paul's brand new Rolls Royce. Incredible. No notes. You know, the reason it's so hard to cover the Beatles is that Beatle history just moved so fast. There was only about 3 months between Rubber Soul's release and the dawn of Revolver production. In those 3 months, the guys took a little break from each other to explore their own interests. George would open himself up to a whole new world, one of new music, religion, philosophy, and culture, and it's all thanks to playing sitar on Norwegian wood. Although he played the sitar, he didn't really know how to play it, and he knew as much. So he reaches out to the best of the best for lessons. Ravi Shankar. They form a lifelong bromance. I love George's bromances with Dylan, with Tom Petty a little later on, with Eric Clapton. Actually, wait, no, I take that back. That one ended horribly. Rubber Soul has proven to be stupid influential. A decent chunk of the jangle pop boom of the 80s and 90s is because of the public's enduring love of Rubber Soul. The Pretenders did it, XTC did it, The Cure did it a lot on my favorite record from them, Wish. This time period in music had quite the love affair with the Rickenbacker. Who do I think of when I think of a Rickenbacker? Neil Halstead of Slowdive. He loves Rubber Soul, and he loved his Rickenbackers. When he wasn't dressing like a Beatle, he was dressing like a member of the Byrds, and fun fact, Johnny Marr of the Smiths owns this Rickenbacker now. And if we're talking Slowdive, we can't forget about the 90s obsession with the tambourine. I think of Mazzy Star as well, and the poppier side of the Jesus and Mary chain. But I do recognize we can't have this legacy conversation without talking about the record that Rubber Soul influenced. What do I always say? It was never Beatles versus Stones. It was always Lennon-McCartney versus Brian Wilson. They'd been in a playful, back-and-forth, friendly competition for years. Rubber Soul inspired Pet Sounds, along with a lot of other music. Brian was listening to a very high volume of music at this time. However, this Rubber Soul was not responsible for Pet Sounds. It was this one. This iteration of the album specifically is the reason we got Pet Sounds. Capitol Records mucked with the Rubber Soul track listing to make it a more cohesive, folksy record. See, I've just seen a face replacing Drive My Car when these UK Beatles albums made landfall here in the States around like 1970, and people heard Drive My Car opening Rubber Soul. Us Americans had our minds blown. This sonically cohesive package inspired Brian to compose a similarly cohesive record, that album being Pet Sounds. And now you have a gotcha moment to piss off all your pretentious Beatle fan friends and all your pretentious Beach Boys fan friends. What do I think of this Rubber Soul? So before we get into my review of this album, I want to shout out the other best weekly vinyl series on YouTube, Vinyl Friday. Nancy's ongoing track-by-track series on Rubber Soul was so helpful to reference while crafting this chapter of my video. I'm not a musician, so sometimes I will miss the technical stuff going on in the music. Nancy is a musician, and a talented one. Watching those Vinyl Friday episodes as a companion piece to my listening was game-changing. If a half hour of me every week isn't enough, you have to check out Vinyl Friday. Going in, Rubber Soul was at some ambiguous higher spot in my Beatles album ranking, but I admittedly haven't spent enough time with it to give it a solid ranking. This record is really good. Like, I shouldn't be surprised, it's the Beatles, but I'm surprised because, firstly, as I spent more and more time with this one, I heard more and more of it in the 90s music that I loved in high school and college. I loved all the Jangle Pop stuff. There She Goes was my jam. So it's really no wonder I warmed up to Rubber Soul the way I did. And secondly, as a White Album devotee, it's my favorite Beatles album for how whackers bonkers it is. Rubber Soul is really good for the exact opposite reasons. It's very cohesive and it's deceptively simple. For one, I literally cannot figure out what time signature the first couple bars of Drive My Car is supposed to be in. Swear to God, there is a fifth beat thrown in there. It may have that snappy Beatles feel to it, but look a little further and it's sort of an R&B swing. You can kind of... Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I can't snap my fingers. I've never been able to. They just don't do that. Just pretend it's kind of like a... Ask the girl what she wanted to be. This whole song reeks of the mid-60s. The drum pattern, the tambourine, the beep, 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 yeah! It's youth, but in a cool way. The other thing that jumps out at me on Drive My Car, and the thing that makes this album so revolutionary within the Beatles catalog, it's Paul's bass playing. I couldn't really hum you any of the Beatles bass lines before this. I can sure as hell do that for Rubber Soul. This is one of the best. Norwegian Wood is a trip. We have this pretty wavy song, but then you listen to the lyrics and it's about the narrator not being able to take a hint from this chick, getting rejected, and burning her fucking house down. I used to think Run for Your Life was the most unhinged song on this album, but damn! There's something so earthy about those early psych tunes, like Sunshine Superman. Norwegian Wood has that same quality. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it has a warm and deep sparseness. Even if George didn't really know how to play the sitar at the time, it doesn't matter because the song is arranged beautifully. Lets the very melodic guitar part shine. Great harmony vocal too. The sign of a great harmony vocal is if you sing that instead of the melody, but you don't realize you're doing it. As lovely as this song is, I do prefer the version we hear on Anthology 2. The heavy use of sitar, John's double-tracked his vocals. If this had been released instead, it would have been a game changer for Psych. You Won't See Me sneaks up on me. We have this very chipper piano part, but distressed and sorrowful lyrics about two people who just don't fit together anymore. It feels like the prelude to For No One off Revolver. Nowhere Man is one of my all-time favorite Beatles tunes. If I had to pick a song to sum up all of Rubber Soul, or to sort of pick as a thesis statement, it would be Nowhere Man. Or if I needed someone, which we'll get to very soon. Firstly, this is a rock-solid vocal blend. John has the lead, but just barely. Everyone's packed together really closely. I remember the Laurel Canyon scene for this. Crosby, Stills, and Nash would master this quality in a few years. This bass line is all over the place. It's like a walking, but there's like arms and legs all over the place. It's a walking bass line that walks like absolute madman John Lennon. How did he physically do that with his body? Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like you and me? I love how ambiguous these lyrics are. John did that mournful, existential, lost feeling really well. The confusion, apathy, and directionlessness of youth endures today. All that's juxtaposed with adorable backing vocals. This is the album of really cutesy backing vocals. The jangly guitar and very open solo is just dripping in Laurel Canyon pop. Nowhere Man is a great example of the symbiotic relationship the Beatles wove with their colleagues. Think for Yourself is the first of the George songs and my lesser favorite of the two. The fuzz on all levels is a little jarring after the crispness of the ones before. But he's doing something really cool with the fuzz. It almost sounds like keys. The Word is, again, very obnoxiously 60s with very prominent backing vocals. And we can't forget about this very 60s quote, "Have you heard the word is love?" I'm not crazy about the central motif of the song or the plainness of the lyrics, but everything else going on wins me over. The rhythm section shines. We have bass, drums, and simple but memorable keys. And then something intriguing happens. As we get farther in the song, the chords the boys sing on The Word get uglier and uglier. Just take a listen to it. I find it interesting that Michelle was kept as the side one closer on both the UK and US versions of the album. I guess both markets understood the importance of having this quaint, sweet little tune in the middle. This is the simplest love we hear about in the lyrics of Rubber Soul. It's just Paul trying to get this chick to notice him, but there's a language barrier. The most deceptively simple song of all is What Goes On. The drum pattern sounds simple enough, it's just a little wrong. Playing this tight, keeping this time is murder. Other than that, the song's just kinda here, I guess. Good job, Ringo. Girl is John trying to manifest his dream girl who seems entirely unpleasant, but meanwhile we're doing this, like, Greek folk song thing? I don't know. Maybe it's John softening his sincerity with a little humor. Gotta love twisting the word leisure to rhyme with pleasure. Putting this song in this place in the track listing is bizarre. This might be some kind of Mandela effect, but I swore this song came later on the album. I'm Looking Through You is another example of happy music, sad and or bratty lyrics. I really like this one. Ringo's the MVP. He's playing drums, organ, and the matchbox. I like how the organ and the guitar link up as one unit. You can't really tell what's what. This song is a mess. Okay, there's a false start on the US version. Someone straight up drops the tambourine halfway through and they just didn't bother to do another take. But it's a delightful mess, a refreshing mess compared to the tightness of the rest of the album. Love has a nasty habit of disappearing overnight. It really doesn't, but it does feel that way when you and your lover have grown into two totally different people. You're just realizing that now, and you're at the breaking point. John could write some whack shit, but he also pulled some really profound, gorgeous songs out of the bag. In My Life was the sweetest and most sincere he ever wrote. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. And these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. The Beatles excelled when their songs were most human, most universal, not vague though, but just open-ended enough to apply any meaning to them. In My Life is like that. There's the uncertainty of the unfamiliar. It makes the love deeper. This song could be from one lover to another, from a father to his infant son, from a son to his father who's just passed away, a mother to her daughter, a friend to a friend. This wound-up piano solo is a very early example of something we might call Baroque pop. This was a much slower genre to define. It took Pet Sounds in '66, Forever Changes in '67, and The Zombies Odyssey and Oracle in '68 to really iron out what it is. Basically, Baroque pop is happy music, sad lyrics. If that isn't Rubber Soul. If you haven't heard the James Taylor cover of In My Life, go fix that. I totally forget about Wait until I hear it, and then I love it. For me, it exists entirely within the walls of Rubber Soul and nowhere else. This feels very 60s girl group to me, with the dissonant jazzy chords. This is a very minimal song. The weight of it lies in the harmonies. I don't usually associate the Beatles with super jazzy stuff like that unless you're talking about You Can't Do That. And I love how we play with rhythm between verse, chorus, and verse. If I needed someone, this is the Georgie song on the record that I prefer. I like fuzz, but I love how crystal clear the guitar is here. It feels like cold rain when it's sunny out. There's something so crisp, refreshing, and bright about it. The treatment of Ringo's crash cymbal makes it more of a wash as opposed to, well, a crash. Had you come some other day, then it might not have been like this. But you see, now I'm too much in love. George is telling this girl, sure, you're objectively pretty. We might have had something had the timing been different. Who knows what's to come? But what matters is right now, and right now I'm gonna marry this girl. And finally, Run for Your Life. This one is the most outwardly unhinged. You gotta love having a song threatening to kill someone, closing out such an otherwise bright and or open sounding album. It's so in line with John's twisted sense of humor. Rubber Soul gets overlooked by its little brothers. Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's, Abbey Road, pretty much everything to follow. But when you break Rubber Soul down, when you dissect the parts that make the whole, you'll find that it's just as good as, if not better than, the follow-up. I know the new Beatles fan thing to do is to be like, actually, Revolver is the best Beatles album. Yeah. But I prefer Rubber Soul. Normally, for me, the more psych, the better. Hell, I have Magical Mystery Tour unreasonably high in my Beatles album ranking. But I also appreciate a warmer, cozier atmosphere with more grounded lyrics. Rubber Soul has those. I feel so annoying and bland saying this, but it's true. Rubber Soul has this beautiful texture and a certain warmth about it. The Beatles used deceptively simple sounds as the canvas to explore complex relationships. And sometimes crisis situations create beautiful art. The guys were put in a pressure cooker, and the outcome is unlike anything else in their catalog. It's understated but not quiet, sticks to your teeth like candy, but it's not too sweet. It might take a try or three to reveal the richness it possesses, but it's worth it. It's like coffee, earthy but still sweet. Rubber Soul does just the trick. I may not have a new favorite Beatles album, but sorry, Sgt. Pepper's, I have a new second favorite Beatles album. My personal favorites off this one are Norwegian Wood, Nowhere Man, I'm Looking Through You, In My Life, and If I Needed Someone. And an honorable mention off the US track listing, I've Just Seen a Face. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that's it! That is Rubber Soul by the Beatles. What do you think of this album? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love, and remember, no matter what some guy on the internet might tell you, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!